Hi.
Ah,
Hey.
hello. Welcome
Welcome
back.
to the Ignited Podcast, the best educational podcast on the internet
Yes, and all of the internet, and
and
all
all of
of
the
the
internet.
World Wide Web.
Yes.
Do you remember like the World Wide Web and like the dial-up connection and like going to the computer lab and like all these nostalgic things in school?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember um Napster. Do you remember that? Might be a
No.
little Napster was like how you downloaded music.
Oh, no. I mean, like I knew about like the LimeWire and things like that, but I didn't know
Mm,
about Napster.
yeah, yeah. So it would take forever to download like one song. Was LimeWire was that where you download, like, an entire album?
I think that you could. Think you also could download one song. The way my family did is like we picked that one delinquent cousin who would then like just virus up a different family member's computer each year
Yeah, yeah.
trying to get
Oh,
us all
yeah.
music.
Oh, I forgot about the viruses. I forgot about the viruses. Oh, man. I'll never
Man.
forget how like, at what lengths we had to go to get free music.
But yeah, we had to
Like,
do so much work.
kids just don't understand.
They know. I was talking about that with one of my coworkers like a couple months ago in front of the kids, and they were like, "What?"
Right.
We had a struggle. It was a process. How did we get on this topic?
The World Wide Web.
The
It's
World
like
Wide
in
Web.
all of the internet. The
And
best
the entire
education
internet.
podcast.
We're here.
Yes.
So, anyways, we're back with chapter 10, Don't Make Me Assimilate, Authenticity, Resistance, and Racism. And Brittany's going to tackle the first summary for us today.
Woo!
You ready for it,
Yes.
Britt? Okay, actually, I had us up for 9 minutes. I feel like you would
Ooh,
actually kill a 9 minute summary, though. I feel like you could just go off.
I just go off.
She would. Like, that could be a podcast episode one time. Like, we just start the stopwatch to see how long Brittany can go summarizing the book
Man,
and like how
yeah.
much details and knowledge and information you can give us. It would be really
Right.
good,
How many
actually.
rants, spinoffs? Yeah,
And see,
okay.
that's why I feel like we make a good team too, because I feel like
Mhm.
you can like make everything so much bigger, and I'm like, compress.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I feel like when you put us together, we get the perfect bite-sized half an hour-ish podcast episode going live at 3:45-ish on Thursdays mostly.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, let's start the live, or not in the live,
Okay.
let's start the recording.
Alright, sounds good.
Ready, set, go.
Okay, so in chapter 10, Don't Make Me Assimilate, Authenticity, Resistance, and Racism, Eric Tashalis talks about the different ways that racism be oh, sorry. Hold on. Oh, gotta close my door. Okay. Eric Tashalis talks about the different ways that students come into embracing their ethnic racial identity, which is called the ERI, and how the different stages in coming into recognizing, immersing in, and like embracing and assimilating into their ethnic and racial identity, all those different stages have different behaviors and different ways where students demonstrate different types of resistance. And he talks about how we as educators can help them create confirming um oh confirming identities that have a lot of power, and we do that by embracing the resistance and not trying to thwart it or dismiss it or punish it, because that type of resistance for marginalized students is really, really important to their identity formation.
And
So
time.
that yeah. Um, that was my okay, so everybody's listening. I just, like, scrunched up my face and went, "Mm,"
Brittany
because
was not happy with that one.
I was not happy with that summary, but it's alas, it's out into the internet sphere, universe.
I think what gets you is when
Nuts.
you get, like, stuck on a detail, because like, for us, we're very good at finding, like, those it's not called a wormhole in conversation. What's it called? Like a
Rabbit hole?
loophole? Rabbit hole, that's the right hole.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
we're very good at finding those rabbit holes and then
Uh-huh.
going down it, and so in our
Yeah.
summary, I feel like if we don't check ourselves, we enter a rabbit hole without realizing we're in the
Yeah.
rabbit hole, and then we're like, "Crap, the hole! Climb out, climb out,
The
climb
whole
out!"
climb
And
out.
then you got, like, 30 seconds left.
I know, I know. Okay. Yeah, it's the time I feel like it's the timer that gets me, and it's really funny because this was my idea.
It was your
The 2
idea.
minutes summary. I'm like, "It
I
would be
was like,
so much fun."
are you sure?"
Yeah, yeah. No, but they're good. They're a good challenge too, so okay.
They are. We
Your
should
turn.
eventually get, like, an ignited merch timer. That'd be good for teachers to, like, have, like, a visual 2-minute timer with, like,
Add
our
it to the
fun
list.
colors or something like that.
Yeah,
Man, like, I'm texting it to you right now.
that's so
Ignited
funny.
merch timer. Alright.
Figure you just get one and
We should have a listener,
uh-huh.
like, compile a list of all of the things that we've said that we should create
The mugs and
on
the
this
t-shirts and the
podcast.
timers
Yeah, and, like,
now.
if you can create that list for us, so we can give you a special discount, so we actually can go back and, like, remember all the things that we said that we should
Right.
create.
Yeah. Shoot, if they'll do all that, I'll give the merch for free.
Hey, let's do that. Offer
Yeah.
extended. The first
Yeah.
person to message us a list itemized of all the things and we've said we've created over season 1 or season 2, we will give
Yes.
you those things for free.
For free.
Mhm.
Just out of
Yep.
like, I'm amazed.
Yes,
Like
we are. We
like,
appreciate the
and
dedication.
appreciate it. Okay.
Right. Here we go.
Alright, ready?
I
3,
am.
2, 1.
All right, so chapter 10, Don't Make Me Assimilate, Authenticity, Resistance, and Racism, talks about how all these things come into play in our classrooms. And it gives an explanation for why students are obviously resistant against racism. And like Brittany mentioned, we talk about ERIs and how they're formed and the different developmental stages that kids go through, or just people go through. So there's the encounter stage where the student realizes that he or she is facing a prejudiced or racial situation, and then they encounter it. And then there's a second stage that follows, which is the immersion stage, which is when they become immersed into their culture and into their ethnic group. Um, and while kids are going through this stage, the difference between how our marginalized kids and the white students interact with each other was also highlighted through microaggressions. So on pages 231, 240, 233, 234, there are these tables listing different microaggressions that can happen in school, or even just in life, honestly, where these messages are coming through, marginalizing someone even more. Um, and the book also talked about how, like, our white students, when they are in these conversations about race, they might want to have an escape and to feel good about themselves and feel comfortable. And they might look to the teacher for that comfort when really we should not be comforting them. Like, let them sit with the discomfort and encounter this, and then look to support our kids who are emphasizing this is going on. And then we talk about how parenting, powerful parenting can help, how resistance is good for students, and how we can the timer we can stop suspensions as one of the solutions and critically examine school discipline policies and outcomes as a solution.
That was fantastic.
I went
That was
over though, so I feel like when you go over, it doesn't even count.
this isn't the Price is Right, dude.
Feels like it sometimes though.
Okay, so what was like a big moment for you in this chapter? Like a big aha.
Um, I liked having the labels for or, like, the structure of encounter and immersion, 'cause, like, I
Mm,
could picture, like, all these things happening in my mind, but have, like, the clear structure for it. I'm a girl who loves structure, what can I say?
yeah.
It's just nice having that. What about you?
Um, I really liked how he laid out, like, how we should, how teachers should approach the the incidences where they're called racist,
Yeah.
or the incidences where race comes into the conversation. I also really liked how he talked about, like, in white culture comfort, um, and I wanna say positive feelings, and that, like, that is emphasized when it comes to racism, and he addressed it really
Can you
well.
explain that a bit more for people who haven't read this chapter?
Yes. So, he says that in in dealing with racism, white people, they come from a position where they have no experience in being on the side of the victim. So, that absence of experience leads to this cultural understanding that it's a tiptoey subject, one that is avoided, or is one that is an experience that we want to resolve so everyone feels good, but by everyone, it's mainly the our white counterparts. And so when we get into a situation as teachers, as white teachers, we tend to try to over explain, or um we try to justify a microaggression with our
Mhm.
intention, and that is detrimental to the relationship because we're not listening to the perspective of the student who's on the receiving end of that microaggression. We're centering our feelings and our discomfort when we should be centering their experience, validating the harm that was done to them. Um, he also talks about how, because of this tendency in white culture to tiptoe and prioritize comfort for our white counterparts, that when issues arise in the classroom, we will focus on the white student's discomfort instead of addressing the um, the racist language, microaggression incident, and will focus on just making sure that everyone, and by everyone, it's in quotes, is comfortable, and will either completely avoid it, shut it down, like, "Oh, we don't talk about that stuff here." Try to change the subject, like, instead of allowing that student to sit in their discomfort, addressing the microaggression and validating the student that was on the receiving end, when that's where we're modeling how to be anti-racist, we're modeling how to, you know, face these situations. And so we really do need to be having these conversations in the classroom.
Yeah, and that modeling is something else I wanted to talk about, and I'm trying to
Mhm.
find where it was mentioned in the chapter. Um, I don't know if you know where it was for it,
Mm.
but where it talked about the importance of modeling and the role of the educator in that.
Um, let me see. So,
Mm, mm, mm.
modeling, maybe you're talking about when teachers are called out for being racist and how to react to it?
Yeah, I think so. And not getting defensive or, like, shutting it down like Brittany said, but instead using it as a moment for, like, an honest reflection, and
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, because I think that's really important, and the topic of modeling in general too, um,
Mhm,
just how you treat students.
I
Like,
know.
that
Mm,
is important, and it's something we talk about inside my course too, like how you and then we're getting off base a little bit here, but, like, how you talk to a kid if they're
mhm,
disrupting your class, that's the culture you're creating. It doesn't matter what's going on, like, you treat people with respect. If you wanna be a respectful person, you treat people with respect, and you can do
yeah,
that even when you're triggered.
absolutely. Okay, so it's on page 244.
Mhm,
He says, "Instead, we can gain much more by drawing our attention to the way behaviors are being received
mhm.
and perceived by the resistant student. To do this, we can ask questions like, 'How do you understand what's happening here? How do you understand my role in the situation? What's your role? What should I do to make this right? What might we do together?' Questions like these invite inquiry and collaboration and may help to break down us versus them ways of thinking that can polarize interactions and exacerbate misunderstanding." Is that what you were
Firstly
talking about?
That's part of it.
Mhm.
Firstly, I think that we should make, like, a bingo card each podcast, and, like, when we say the same quote, each other highlighted,
Yeah.
like, we keep playing for bingo. But in that one, I wanted to address the question, "What should I do to make this right?"
Yeah.
I think that's something we as educators forget to ask. And the way I used to word it was a bit different. I'd be like, "If I could, like, go back and fix anything or say anything or do anything, what could I do? What could I say?"
Mm.
Just to hear, like, what part, like, really stood out in the kid's head to
Mhm.
help me reflect and then solve it.
Yeah, and
But
that's a really good
take
exercise.
yeah, taking that accountability, that's where growth comes from.
Right.
I feel like it's easy to get sucked into, "Well, all this stuff is happening to me, like, what can I do? What can I say?" It's just chaos. But you
Mhm.
have a role and you have ownership.
Absolutely. And which makes it seem like we have control, which we do. We do. It doesn't make it seem like we have control. Gives us it gives us control on making it right,
Yeah,
and that improves our sense
exactly.
of competency.
Like, we can't control somebody else's actions, but we
Mhm.
can control how we respond.
Right.
And we can control how we leave a space.
Yes.
That'd be a
Um,
good topic we could flesh out in a blog post or something, or like a whole
mhm.
other podcast episode.
Right. Um, so what was what was a quote that you wanted to say? Because we have 10 minutes left.
Ooh, okay. Um, okay. I want to talk about the white students trying to escape this
Okay.
discomfort a little bit too.
Okay.
This one comes from page 227. And it is talking about what we said before how a lot of white students' experiences in the mainstream is affirming. But when peers of color confront them with critiques, accusations, and even rage, white students too will often seek escape. When they are confronted with their own privilege and their own complicity in racism, white students may first reject the accusations and seek refuge in relationships that will provide comfort and reassurance that they are not a racist or that they are a good person. When educators provide this comfort, rifts between the privileged and the marginalized are often widened rather than bridged. And if we're not careful, Our differential responses to white students versus students of color can make it look like the students who confront racism are being disciplined, while those who perpetuate it are being consoled.
Mhm.
I feel like that was just one like you need to just leave right there. I don't think it
Yeah,
really warrants any explanation.
right. Um, I'm just thinking about all of the situations that I've been in where this has been the primary go-to behavior, um, is like the teacher trying to over explain like the student's intention instead of addressing like the microaggression. Um, and I also um I'm also in that headspace of a middle school teacher where identity is a huge a huge
Yeah, it's
developmental
everything. I was thinking that during this
milestone.
chapter too.
Mhm. Um, and not just with like your the racial identity, and the resistance around ethnic and racial identity, but all of the other types of identity formation that occurs during that time, and how this chapter was just really good general advice in how to handle the resistance that comes up because of the identity formations. Um, Always trying to consider where's the student coming from? How is my behavior? How is the behavior of the school? How is the behavior of their peers being received and perceived? What is their focus on? What is the hierarchy of importance? Like um, in school, academia, social relationships, family, um, then, political identities. So, and this is also a time when sexuality is coming into play and physiological development. Uh, it really it's a middle school's a beast. That's why I always say, like,
It
middle school
is.
teachers are my jam, because if you enjoy teaching middle school, you are a different breed. Like
We really are.
yeah,
And I also feel like
yeah.
you have to go into it like you have to love
Humble.
like the zany chaos, but also just like absurdity. Like you have to be able to appreciate absurdity and just like
Mhm.
all of the different things happening. Like you have to have like the personality where it's like, give me sensory input, 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 input,
Mhm.
input. Because that is
No,
middle school.
yeah, and you have to appreciate the creative jabs, like the creative insult. Because I was just thinking the other day, and this might not be, I don't know, it's not politically correct. I don't but a student once told me when I got my bangs cut that my bangs looked like Hitler's mustache, and I remember laughing.
Wow.
I know, and I'm like, "Oh my god, like, should I make that a post?" And I'm like, "No, that's not appropriate," or like, "That's not appropriate." But I'm like, that it got me thinking like, "Oh man," like, those are the kinds of things, like, you have to be able to laugh at in order to survive middle school,
Yeah.
because like, and to appreciate the creative genius behind, like, the mental gymnastics that is, like, creatively insulting the people that you kind of like, or that
Yeah.
you love, like, that
Absolutely.
teacher or that student was one of my closest students, like, so it wasn't, when they said it with love.
Yeah. And that's what middle school is too, like being able to like go back and forth, have like those little roast sessions
Right,
and like
right.
doing it in jest, like and in good spirit. Like they love that stuff. They eat
Yeah.
it up.
They do, and it's really like it's a mental gymnastics. It's
Hmm.
how fast can you, form a retort? And how
Yeah.
funny is your retort compared to the other person's?
And sometimes they say things. Like, I remember one year, I would try so hard not to laugh for some of them, the ones where I was like, "You can't say that, though."
Right, right,
Like,
like, "No, dude."
one of them was, like, these kids were friends, and they're just going back and forth, and then the guy says something to a girl, and the girl comes back, and she's like, "Yeah, that's pretty bold coming from a guy who looks like an Olive Garden breadstick." And I was like, "I see it now."
That's legit. This should be an episode where we just go through all of the middle school insults that we've heard.
We should do, like, an off-season special too, like, where we post a question and then people, like, share their own
Oh,
stories
yeah,
and
yeah,
experiences. That would be fun.
absolutely. Oh my gosh, that'll be so funny. No, middle schoolers,
Yeah.
like, the identity formation years are such a struggle, but they're so good. There's so many good
They
things that
like, you don't
yeah.
need Netflix, man. If you teach middle school, you don't
No,
need Netflix, you don't need
no.
Hulu, you can cut all the cords. You get your
Save
entertainment in your
so
9 to
much
5.
money. Right, right. Oh,
Exactly.
man.
So, I feel like we should switch gears now and talk
Mhm.
about, some, I guess, like, solutions, but also problems, because one of the problem/solutions is the suspension
Oh,
aspect
yes.
of things, right?
Mhm.
Because, like, I'd be interested to see, like, who listening to this podcast has a school system where they use suspensions, because the research for this has been so damning for so long, but still,
Mhm.
we do it. Um,
That's what I was thinking when I was reading
mm,
that. I'm like, "How why?" Well, I have a theory of why I think it's the go-to response, even though the research is so blaringly or
I love your
glaringly
theories. Tell us
obvious.
now.
Okay, so my theory is when a teacher is advocating for suspension, even though the research for decades has proven it is not effective. In fact, it's counter effective and it's going to make the behavior worse. Research is it's glaringly obvious. It's staring us in the face that suspension doesn't work. So why is it the go-to? And my theory is that a triggered mind, a triggered brain, which is what a teach that's the state, that's the mental state that a teacher is in when they're advocating for suspension. That mental state is an emotional state and is more focused on protecting the teacher than it is in problem solving the behavior. So if you're in a moment of this kid needs to just be sent home or this kid needs to be pulled out of my class or if you're if you're thinking that, I just want you to pause and notice what you're feeling. Is your anxiety up? Is your stress response on? Are you getting irritable? Are you irritable? Because those are the signs of the brain being in an emotional state instead of the thinking state. And we're not going to solve any problems if we're in an emotional state. Problem solving, you know, noticing patterns, creatively thinking, being able to think about what um, all of the potential factors of our decisions those things can only happen if our thinking brain is engaged. So teachers are overwhelmed. They're incredibly emotional because of the system that they've been put in. Then they're, dealing with so many things that are triggering just to the human brain in general, like confrontation, disrespect, aggressive behavior. So a teacher's brain is
Evaluation too.
evaluations, right? And evaluations that compromises your need for safety because that's your livelihood. So, um, if you are thinking about, okay, suspension, this student needs to be suspended. It's not effective, 100% not effective. You gotta think why are you thinking that? Is it because you're in an emotional reactive stress response state?
Yeah, and see, I see all of that, but I also see that I think schools use it too because they don't know what else to do, and it feels like they're doing something. It's giving PBIS,
Mm,
you
yeah,
know? Um, and also when you are in your emotional state, you default to whatever you experienced as a child, and if in your school there
yep,
were suspensions, that's what you're going to do.
right,
Um, I also wanted
which
to say something else, like 2 things kind of
mhm,
segueing-ish off of your topic. It's like sometimes I do think there is, not frequently, but sometimes I think that there is a need if you have to call for a child to like leave your classroom to talk to somebody else, especially if it's like
mm,
you on 30 and you can't give that kid the attention or support that they need in the moment, and there's
mhm,
someone else in the school who could. The way you frame that is so important. So even being like, "Hey, I really want you in here, like, I love having you. I think it might be helpful for you to talk to this person for a little bit to come back and join us, and I can't wait for you to be back here."
mhm,
But
yeah,
if you frame it like, "Hey, this is for you to help you, like, we want you back in here, I'm not kicking you out. I just
right,
want you to have some support so you feel a bit better because I can see right now it doesn't look like you're feeling very good."
mhm, yep,
It also makes you feel less triggered when you're talking like that.
right,
And I think the other issue is that schools don't know what to do because of staffing. 'Cause they're like, we don't have people to, like, navigate talking to all these kids and, like,
mm,
supporting them.
mhm,
But we have people available for state testing when we have
yeah,
to break the entire school down into these tiny little groups for 2 weeks. So I feel
yes,
like we have to get a bit more creative with our human resources. And,
100% and
um,
prioritize.
that's what I was gonna say, your actions show where your priorities lay.
Yeah,
And then the other thing over here, maybe this should be the last thing we talk about too,
mhm,
is critically examining your school discipline policies and outcomes, which is something that every school should be doing.
mhm,
And it's also something that Brittany and I can help your school do too. We work together, like we obviously do the podcast, but we have a whole business called Ignite Education Solutions, where like we go into schools, into districts, and we give you this kind of support. So if you are interested in working with us to have us help support you, your school, and your students, and your community, then feel free to check out the description box. Our email is right there, and you can email us an inquiry. We'll have a form attached too, where we
mhm,
can get in touch with you the ways we can better support you and your school.
yep. Reviewing discipline data, collaborative discipline teams, school-wide, PDs, trainings, and, developing more proactive school discipline policies is our jam. That's what we thrived at
In
being
case you couldn't
teachers.
tell.
Yep, yep, and now we're moving into supporting districts and schools, which is awesome. That feels so good, like,
It
creating
does.
change on a wider scale.
Yeah, and even, like, a few weeks ago, because Brittany was out here visiting me, we
Mhm,
were like, like, we both are such we come together so well, I feel like,
mhm,
but we're both such, like, opposite ends of different spectrums,
yeah,
like, even in terms of our teaching journey, because we were talking about the kind of teachers that we're able to, like, connect with and understand, and Brittany was like,
mhm,
Ashley, like, you can connect with those teachers who are, like, the dictators, like, they wanna be told what to do, like, they wanna
mhm,
just do their thing, go home, like, this is not their job, like, you understand the way they think, and she's like, "I don't understand the way they think," but
mhm,
she understands a whole different group
yep,
of teachers,
yep.
and that's why, like, it's really I think it's we make a great pair. I love you. Oh,
We
no, I
do. Oh,
can't
I
figure out
love
a
you too.
computer now.
Yeah. Virtual hugs.
Virtual hugs.
So, I think that was a great chapter.
They all
It's
are
super
great.
timely. Yeah. Um, there was one quote that I did, I know that we were supposed to end on that, but I think, um, the section on immigrant students
Oh, yeah. We haven't touched on
that
that.
Yeah, we did not touch on that, and I think that it's really important to touch on that. So let me just find the section. Um, um, okay. So the I'm gonna pull like just in like 2 minutes. I'm gonna take 2 minutes to talk a little bit about this. Is
Go for it.
the um, immigrant students who enter school under these types of circumstances, the circumstances being um, the mainstream idea of immigrants aren't welcome in the United States. When they enter school under these circumstances, they may be rightfully suspicious of the institution and its educators. They may underperform, withdraw, and resist to protect their threatened sense of self worth. Some educators and policymakers will draw attention to those tendencies to argue that immigrants don't value education like we do, or that some cultures just aren't as academically motivated. But research does not support these conclusions. Um, the problem, and then a little bit more down the page, he says the problem is the mainstream and not the margins. Um, the next point is what's called like the home court advantage for English speakers.
Yeah.
The home court advantage that English speakers enjoy in school makes native English speakers look like they earned their success, while it deprives English language learners equal access to education that is guaranteed by law and makes English language learners feel like unwanted visitors. To expect immigrant students to always be friendly, open, focused, appreciative, and compliant when the prevailing message we send them is get out of here is either cruel or irresponsible or both.
Yeah.
Yep. And uh, if you've never been a primarily English speaker in a country that doesn't speak English, like if you only speak English, and you go to, the small towns in France or in any other area of the world, you'll know you'll just get a taste of what it's like for these students.
Mhm.
It is not easy, and I think that is an experience that every American who's going to talk about, "Oh, you need to speak English, da, 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 da,"
Yeah.
you need to experience because it is truly, truly difficult. Like, it's very, very hard to be a person that doesn't speak the language in a country, and navigate it and not feel like you're just a total idiot. Like, it's very hard, very stress inducing, and I, am amazed constantly by people who are bilingual, like, and or just here barely speaking English and trying.
Yeah, and the effort that goes into doing that, like, I'm trying to be bilingual right now. It is a journey.
Man, I've tried to learn French for the past, like, 2 decades. It's
French
hard.
is so hard.
It's so
Like,
but it's not. The language is
it's
easier than
not.
English.
What gets
It's easy.
me is the vowels. Like, I have a hard time following just
Oh,
English vowel patterns.
yeah, yeah, I get that, like, pronunciation. So
Mhm.
my best friend speaks Arabic, and she's been wanting to me to for me to learn Arabic for a really long time. And I'm like, "Well, is Arabic harder than English?" And she said, "Yeah." And it's not because of, like, the vocab, it's because of the sounds you have to make, the
Mhm.
enunciations. And I'm like, "Well, dang, Iman, I don't know if I can do that." Trying to learn French for the past, you know, 20 years. So anyway.
Anyway, Should we end then with our action step?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Um, do you wanna go first or do you want me to?
I can go first.
Okay.
I think that mine would be to, um, I guess, like, if you are a white teacher, like, when you're feeling that racial discomfort, to sit in it and then reflect and look at your ownership and your accountability in the situation. Um, and then when you're leaving your classroom, to view like these moments of discomfort as moments for growth and for understanding.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, yeah, my action step is if your students are calling you racist all the time, if they're bringing up racism every day, if they're joking about it, if they're like if it's just obnoxiously in the classroom in conversations and everything that they do and talk about and laugh at, that's them asking for the whole like a whole class discussion.
Mhm.
Don't try to shut it down. Like,
Yeah.
they don't know how to ask, "Hey, can we sit down and can we talk about this?"
Mhm.
They're not going to ask that. What they're going to do is they're gonna make inappropriate jokes, they're gonna call everybody racist, they're gonna bring it up, and I've experienced it firsthand, and if you just sit down and have, like, an open discussion, n you're able to regulate yourself, you feel educated enough, and you feel good about having the discussion, then you can facilitate it. If you don't, try to find somebody else that feels that way and that can. Bring
Yeah.
them in. The kids want to talk about it. Like, they are in a country that swears up and down that it's not segregated, but it's clearly segregated. So in
Yeah.
their adolescent brain, it's like, "What is going on? Like, are we just seeing this and are we crazy?" You know, they wanna talk about it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well,
Mhm.
hoping you guys enjoyed this episode and that you feel remoralized.
And re-energized.
We'll see you
Until
next
next
week.
time.
Bye.
Bye.